Okay, so coming into the kuti. Now this kuti, as I said, is built specially. So it's a building inside of a building inside of a building and into the inner sanctum. But this being India and a semi-spiritual revered building, it's a special building, we would walk in a clockwise manner. I don't know the reason why, and it's not like I only do that, but this is generally why, and I'm sure someone out there knows why. So this is the next sanctum. And as we can see, it's built in this specific way. So there are these air vents that also allow some light in. And then also up above, there are vents. And I got to know this hallway so well over months, because when it was nighttime, I would come out and I would walk. And now here is, honey, I'm home. Now this is the inner sanctum. And I'm not sure if you can see on the video, but there are 3 of those window type things. And so there's actually light coming in right now. And this is how this kuti is built. And so once in here for some time, it would be, it's enough light to where you can walk and not run into things. Couldn't read or even see the food that eating. Personally, both times that I did this, initially I was very interested in the darkness and whatnot of what's going to happen. So they also have curtains on here, and so you can cover it with it. And so throughout the day, I would have it in total darkness. So this is the kuti. This is my home, and I have great love for this place. Yeah, I've got a lot of love for this place. Excuse me. So this is a table here. How it would happen is they would bring the food. We'd have a table right here. It's not very much light. I have the light on so it looks like more, but still I would put the eye mask on. I would get the food, put it over here, eat. Eating in the darkness it's not a big deal. In India and most places these days, I like to eat with my hands generally, probably about 70% of the time. Sometimes I like silverware. But that's another thing that don't even realize, like a fish in water, don't even realize there are other ways to do things. And so growing up with silverware and this is the way, and if you're wealthy and refined, then you have fine silverware, of course, So when I realized after being in different places where it's not the same, and here in India, I would guess I don't have as much experience with the middle income and above. I have friends in all 3, and there are certainly, as I said, there are many in middle, and there are some incredibly large amounts of wealth in India as well. But I can't speak with that as much. Most of the time I'm with people who are in the lower incomes or in the rural, or I'm on my own. So a large amount of people use their hands. And as I began doing it and then began thinking and began these places, it's another one of those okay, wow. So this is another reason. Now, I'm not saying that silverware doesn't have its benefit, and I appreciate it and I use it. But it's also a way that nature gave us naturally to be able to eat. And again, modern science is now showing that actual tactile interaction with food sends a message to the brain, and the amount that we chew it and keep it in our mouth sends a message to the brain that sends a message, or sends a message to the mind that sends a message to the gut to prepare different types of juices and biles and things, get ready in certain sorts of ways. And this is another really simple, natural way of having better health, is to chew our food more, which personally, even in the dark room, I'm practicing. I got nowhere to go. I got nothing to do. And I'm observing myself continually because I'm in meditation basically 24/7. And I'm wow, I'm still eating fast, because this is, for whatever reason, at least how I grew up from my own personal way of taking in all the information. It was very much about efficiency and accomplishing and doing things. And so one of those ways is like have less time eating. And subsequently that gives the body less time to prepare. And it also puts less prepared food into the gut. And so this causes different issues. But what I discovered, as I said, when I'm, at least for myself personally, is like, okay, nature gave me this way of eating. And it's actually really enjoyable for me personally. And it feels just natural. And then subsequently where we're at is, instead of using the natural free way, I'd use a way that, one, separates me from nature and separates me from my food by using the silverware. It costs money. And it is something, especially if I'm using plastic silverware, that is introducing, even if it's in a micro amount, it's introducing some foreign, unnatural thing into my body. And so I just enjoy using hands. And that's how I would do in the dark room. And yes, for my friends who have not been in countries like these, it is possible to eat soups and curries and dal and things with your hands. You come to India or someplace and you find out and you're like, wait a minute, what? Usually with rice or with like a chapati, which is what we would call sort of like a tortilla in the West or things. So I would have the food here. Here I got a little floor covering, and then I put a yoga mat on it to give it some cushion and cover it with a sheet. And then I would meditate on the floor here and then recline my back if I would like to. This chair, I put a cushion on the bottom. And then the bed, and this was my home, as I will share more about the meditation. But yeah, I wound up being a large amount of the time in all the dark retreats. Dark retreats in periods of darkness. I wind up. I'll share more about that then. So this is the home. This guy I have a real a mixed relationship with. In the first one, I was doing lots of things that I had kind of created, focused around attempting to heal and bring positivity to my relationships with family. And so I called this the family tree. And I would come and I would give it hugs for long periods of time, visualizing different family members. And I was also, the first time I did this, well, I'll share more, but like full on. And so I was wanting some connection. Normally there would be a rug here. And so in darkness, and this is why I will put this here. So in darkness, it's a really, well, actually, let me finish this first and then I'll continue. So this is the bathroom. It's a bucket shower. So nicely, and I didn't show, but in India and many places outside of the U.S., I don't know why we don't really do it in the U.S. that I'm aware of, but you have water canisters often on the roof or whatever, and they take some sort of solar, not like a special expensive panel, just like it collects sun heat and it heats the water. And so it's free basically once you buy it. So that would be a way that I would really enjoy and have like a little pleasure, a little lightness in the darkroom, is have a nice warm shower and just cover myself. And this is an example, this is what I dig. This is a combination of a Western toilet. Obviously you can sit down here, and a squatting toilet. And that's another, there's this, and I remember when I was I wasn't even a Marine, I was in ROTC, so I was in college. And in the summer we'd go to different trainings. And I went to this mountain warfare school in really fun and interesting time. But in the barracks where we would stay, which is like what you would call a dorm, but for military. So many bunk beds and things. In the bathrooms there, which is, many different stalls and whatnot, they would have piece of paper here or on the toilet or whatever, because they would get foreign nationals there from different countries. And in those countries, they use squat toilets more. Squat toilet being generally like it would be this, it's a hole, and they even can have flushes or whatnot. And so you're just squatting. And so on those pieces of paper, it would have like little images, and it would show like a person squatting on a regular Western toilet, and then like a cross out, don't do this, and like, you know, how to sit on the toilet. And back then, being a youngster and not having experienced both the way that there are different ways to do it, and that even if it doesn't make sense to me currently, it doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense or something like that, that there's only one way. I didn't as much understand that as I'm learning these days. And so I was like, wow, like these people don't understand, like they're so thinking so differently that they're squatting. Like, where are these people from? Like the caves? That's what I was thinking back then. And it took me a couple decades, no, decade and a half, until I was exposed to it more often to realize that this is another example of what I was saying, of where like nature gives us this natural way. And modern science is now studying, or medical, doing this squat is actually very healthy, both just in general. You know, you go to the gym, and if you're doing real squats, you're coming all the way down to touching like this for a reason, because it's good for you. And also it's just good. It's something really cool to be in these different countries and to see it's kind of going away now that the smartphone and really low cost internet has come. And it's something really incredible to see, of like coming from the West and these stories that I had believed of, yeah, you know, like these people, they don't have access to all the wonderful information on the internet. Let's get them this, and this will take them out of poverty or whatever. Because in the West, we have this different story of poverty and things that we rank things off of money versus off of the actual experience. Or, you know, the fact that in the US, we don't have villages where you can go and people are self-sustaining and they just share and support each other. And so you don't need money. So whether or not they're making $1 a day isn't really that like valid to their life experience. And similarly with this thought about like access to cheap information, and we see what it's done in the US. I mean, I'm lots of benefit and appreciation for the internet and the smartphone. I've gained great benefit, and I'm obviously using it right now. But if I were to be honest, I would say that it's brought much more harm into my life than good. And we see this with so many different addictions, whether it's pornography or the really dark sides of the internet and pornography, which I experienced as a youngster and subsequently, you know, brought harm into my life for the rest of it until I began releasing. Or it's just on the continual scrolls or things. And all of the issues that we have in the West, well, it's no different anywhere else. And so you go to small villages and things now, and internet here, I pay a couple dollars a month to have 2 gigabytes a day. I don't remember how much, no, like, I think I paid $6 for 56 days, whatever that equals. You know, so it's quite inexpensive. But you don't see lots of people. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, and there is everything. And like I said, I have gained benefit from it. But you don't see lots of people who are using it to like do distance learning and like study about what foods to eat and whatnot. You see lots of scrolling. You see lots of PUBG, like playing, you know, how do I kill human beings? And you see lots of these really shallow interactions and whatnot, such as life currently. But with the older population still in the outside of the towns, you drive down or walk down the road and you'll see, I'll see older men in the grandfather age or in the father age. And they'll just be on the side of the road, or you see them out in the field, and they're just squatting like this. They don't have a phone. They don't have a book. They don't have anyone else that they're talking to. They're just squatting, and they're just looking. They're just being with the experience of nature and life and the freedom that exists in nothing and emptiness and peace and just stopping all the doing for a little bit and just experiencing what is free and available all the time. So once I started seeing that, I really dug it. But anyway, back to the toilet. This is provided naturally, and it also works in this way to where the gut, the colon, is all lined up. And so I don't have to force. Whereas when I sit down on a toilet like this, it's all of a sudden from straight, how do you do this? Is a kink. That doesn't seem as easy. I haven't researched this, but I would assume that the amount of hernias and things in a population that is more naturally going to the bathroom than in a country that's using what is called the Western toilet, I would imagine there's much less hernias and things like that. Now, these toilets have great benefit as well. I used to love just sitting on the toilet and reading. And it's a little bit more difficult to do that squatting. And I didn't used to be able to squat like I did just now. Of course, it's just something that came over time. But I recognized that it had value, and so I began doing it. And this is something that, again, we have these stories in all our different cultures. I'm just familiar the most with the United States and the West. It is nothing about, I am certainly not saying that the United States or the West, I don't even like using these labels, but like this is how we communicate in order to share ideas currently. But I'm not saying that one is better than the other. India is not like it's figured it all out. I mean, you don't have to look far to see like areas that India could really use some assistance with. And it's the same with the US or with any other country. It's just that I have the most amount of experience with the US and with the West and with the capitalistic system or the for-profit system. And so this is just what I'm speaking about from my own experience. But this situation here, it separates me more from the natural way. It costs money, and it provides some level of harm. And so it's just another one of those examples where after some time being in a culture where at first it seems like rather bizarre, it's like, really, I gotta squat like this? Are you kidding me? And then at some point it's like, okay, that's interesting. And as I was saying, we have these stories, many of them that I'm familiar with in the US, is that at some age, you're just not able to do things, you're just inflexible and can't go upstairs and things like this. Now, again, of course, I'm not denying that aging exists and that the body changes, and I've experienced it myself. And there are certain things which either I'm not able to do or do have some level of pain or limitation than before. So I'm not denying that whatsoever. But these stories about when that happens or what is possible is very different in different places. And so in these countries, which had these traditions, such as doing the squatting, the people that are 80 and 90 years old are still doing this, and they're squatting like I was squatting, and their joints and things are able to do it, and they're not having knee replacements and hip replacements like we're having in the US, to find someone with a knee replacement, you just need to go downstairs and say hello, and like you find someone with a hip or a knee replacement. But they're not having that here, and yet they're able to do this. And so this, again, it opens my mind a little bit about what is actually reality versus what is self-created reality. Similarly, when I was staying a couple weeks, I think it was a couple weeks, maybe it's 10 days, 7 days, more than that, in a small village up in like the beginning of the Himalayas in India, and just another, so many lessons to be learned. This is why I'm such a huge fan and proponent and supporter of people in whatever country, and even whatever town and state, just going to another place to get exposed to different ways of thinking. And then whether or not you don't want to live there or do want to live there, you come back to where you're from and your mind has been expanded. My mind has been expanded, and it just going in this, like seeing things in different possibilities. And so, yeah, in that place there were some for sure. One of them being in the homes, they're made of stone, like big pieces of stone. And the bottom floor is where the animals would stay because it's in the Himalayas, and so to keep them out of the nature, nature is strong. And so they would do that, but of course it also has a purpose because heat rises, and so the animals, cows and things of this sort, because in many of these places historically a family would have a cow that provides the milk. The heat is rising, and so it's heating, warming the people who are above. And so that means that they're walking to what would be considered a second story. And these are on big pieces of rock, stone. And they're doing this multiple times a day. And I'm there with another Indian man. He's a really interesting and nice young man. And he goes to different, more local communities and kind of attempts to help them in different ways, because India, as so many places in the world, is going through this kind of, I don't want to say identity crisis, but massive acceleration of change that often appears to be really short-sighted and harmful. And so losing lots of historical traditions, such as things like I talked about Ayurveda, or this knowledge of food or things, and subsequently bringing in things which are convenient, such as sitting on a toilet, disposable. The ability to find something of quality in places like this is very challenging. And it's one of those dark sides of capitalism that you see where, again, I'm not saying capitalism is good or bad. I'm just saying this is one result that it brings. Capitalism, the focus of capital being money. So it's not talking about bringing quality or bringing assistance. It's talking about what gives me the most money. And so in certain places, there's many different types of capitalism. In the US, we have a somewhat different type than in other places, though you can see this sort of thing there as well, but not as glaringly. But it's providing low quality things that have a short life. And so when I was first here, I had these sandals, reef sandals. Really, I got them when I was in California, and I don't forget how long they just broke. Well, I guess that was over a year ago. But I had them for, I think, 5 years at least, the leather. And I would tell that to my friend back then. It was like 3 years, and it blew their minds, because you're gonna buy plastic flip-flops and they break after a few months or something, and that's just what it is there. It's just what's available. And so, it's not everywhere, and I don't want to paint it as like this is the only way, but for most people, that's what's available. And it's difficult for me as a person who has more money and access, and still it's difficult for me to find things. So this identity change, lots of wisdom is going away. And so this young man assists people. But anyway, I was there with him, and so he would kind of point things out to me and whatnot, and I would just see on my own. But yeah, these tall stone, irregular steps. It's not like in the US where every step is at the same height. All these irregular heights. And everyone's doing it. Women that are 80 and 90 years old, they're going up and down it every day, and they're not like all hobbled over and things. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I asked him, and he asked local people, and we're getting verification of the ages and things. And it's like, yeah, that's what's happening. And it's a different way of thinking. That wouldn't, at least where I am from, it's like you're in your 50s and you're thinking about, I might want to have a single-story home soon because my knees and my joints are going to be going out. It's going to be difficult for me to walk up these carpeted, whatever that my dad would know. He's a carpenter. I don't know the height of stairs with a railing, It's a trip. And similarly, on the other end of the spectrum, and I took some videos and pictures posted back in the day, but these children that are like 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and this is on the Himalayas. It's a mountain, so it's stepped. It's, I forget the word, but terraced. So they cut into the mountain and make these flat areas, and then there's a wall, and then a flat area, and a wall, and flat area, so that they can farm and live and things. And so these terraces are, 5 meters, 15-ish feet high, or maybe less, 12, 15, 20, depending. And there's children, 3, 5 years old, 7 years old. They're just walking around, going down, going to play, throwing things. There's no parents around. They're not watching them. I'm not saying that injuries don't happen, but it's certainly nowhere near like what I would have thought previously in places like, you go to an American city or something, and like everything is regulated, and like it's got safety everywhere, and still you're not going to see kids walking around doing stuff, especially not on like a mountain like that, but they're able to do it. Similar in India, or I mean in Uganda and things. I would see these things, children doing things that you just wouldn't imagine. It was a few months ago before I came into the Kuti. I was passing through Delhi, which is one of the largest cities in the world population-wise, and I don't remember, but it's massive, and it's a very different city than New York City or LA. Massive. You come to Delhi and it's like full on. There's all kinds of things going on, and it's a lot more than just a bunch of cars like you would find in another city. There's all kinds of things going on. Fire and animals and all kinds of different vehicles and movement of everything. And so I'm walking there doing whatever, and I see a cart being pulled by like a buffalo, which is pretty common. But it has some stuff in the back that's being collected. And who's driving it alone through Delhi? Which, like, I feel that I can drive in India now, and I've ridden motorcycles and things in India. I've never driven in a city like Delhi, but I feel confident now due to my meditation practice and due to different things, due to being a pilot and being able to see and drive and things. But I certainly, I've been in India for over 21-ish months out of the last 3 years. I've been in here for a decent amount, and I'm feeling confident now, but most foreigners, most Westerners would not, drive in India for their whole lives if they were living here, because it's intense. Driving is different. And who's driving through Delhi with like a buffalo pulled cart? This kid that's like 12 years old. Just doing it, he's not stressed out, he's not freaked out. Who knows how far away from home he is? Who knows what responsibility he has of these items that he's carrying? Who knows, like it's not a car that you just step on the brake. This is an animal, and it can do all different sorts of things. And he's not using Google Maps, and he's just doing it, That's life, baby. All right, I think that's one of the possibilities of life. And that's why, like I said, I love being in different places, because it shows these possibilities of like, okay, maybe these things that I didn't even realize were limitations, one, they exist, and two, they don't need to exist. Let's see here. I think that's good for now. I shared the Kuti, and this one is getting long again. I think I'm going to take a break. This is more screen time than I generally have, and much more talking than I've had in months. So until we meet again, next time I will start talking about my general darkness, why I have timelines, things like that. Then I'll go into the meditation more, then I'll share experiences, suggestions, and whatnot. So peace out, have fun, much love.